The sound of the pump nozzle snapping into the tank cut through the silence of the morning. She adjusted the strap of her bag on her shoulder, took a deep breath and watched the slow movement of the post. 2 cars, a man buying coffee. Nothing special. Until the car appeared. 2 doors opened almost at the same time. The dry sound of metal pounding echoed through the empty parking lot. 3 police officers got off. The younger one walked slowly, looking to the sides. The one in the middle adjusted his belt. But the third, the one with a red face and a locked jaw, was coming straight toward her. She felt the weight of her gaze before she even heard the voice. Documents. Now. The order came without introduction, no context, for no apparent reason. She turned her face slowly, keeping her hands visible. It was not the first time. She knew the silent protocol that women like her learned early. Don't react too quickly. Don't seem aggressive. Do not make excuses. Can I ask why? Her voice came out firm, calm, but inside, the heart was already racing. The policeman took another step. Now it was too close, the distance that anyone would respect. He purposely ignored it. I asked the questions here. Documents. The tone rose. The witnesses at the station looked away. The woman at the checkout pretended to organize cigarettes. The coffee man lowered his head and got into the car. She took a deep breath. Her hands trembled slightly as she opened her bag, not out of fear, of contained indignation. That's when he appeared. It didn't run. He didn't scream. He only took 2 steps to her side, stepping out of the shadow of the car, high, wide, silent. The officer noticed the presence and hesitated for a split second. That's all. But she felt it. His authority wavered. Her husband said nothing. He just stood there, arms relaxed at his sides, staring, non-threatening, only present. The air changed. The police officer tried to regain control. Is she with you? Yes. The answer came quietly, unhurriedly. The second police officer approached, reinforcing, but the third, the youngest, was left behind, watching, hesitant. She finally found her driver's license and reached out. The police officer snatched the document from her hand with unnecessary force. You got nervous, right? Nervous people always have something to hide. She did not answer. He just kept his eyes fixed on him, firm, without deviating. And then, for the first time, the officer looked directly at the man next to her. He really looked. His posture stiffened, the jaw locked even more. But something in his eyes changed. Something small, almost imperceptible. Doubt. She noticed. And I knew that it wouldn't end the way he planned. The policeman held the wallet as if it were evidence of a crime. He turned the document from side to side, pretending to examine every detail. But his eyes didn't read anything. They were only looking for a pretext. Address does not check. She took a slow breath before answering. We moved 3 months ago. The wallet still has the old address. Convenient. The word came out loaded with accusation. He took another step. Now his index finger pointed inches from her face. Red, tense, trembling slightly with pent-up anger. Do you know how many people lie to me every day? Do you know how many times I hear this same excuse? The second police officer positioned himself next to him. Arms crossed, wide posture, silent reinforcement. The message was clear. We are many, you are alone. But she was not alone. Her husband did not move. He didn't have to. His presence was sufficient. Her broad shoulders blocked out some of the morning light. His shadow covered the ground between her and the officers. What is the legal reason for the approach? His voice came low, controlled. The officer ignored the question and continued pointing his finger at her. I ask the questions, you just answer. That's when the young man in the other car raised his cell phone. Discreet, but not enough. The policeman noticed the movement out of the corner of his eye. His posture has hardened even more. Now there was a witness. Now there was registration. And suddenly, his scream seemed to echo louder, forced, as if he needed to prove something to the camera. Do you think you can challenge me? Do you think you have the right to question authority? She did not answer. He just kept his gaze steady. No anger, without fear, just quiet dignity. His finger was still shaking in the air, but now for another reason. It wasn't just anger. It was insecurity. The second officer took a sidestep, trying to block the view of the cell phone. But the young man had already changed his angle. The camera kept recording. Her husband adjusted the position of his feet. That's all. It did not advance. He did not threaten, but his body weight has changed. And everyone felt it. The excited policeman took a deep breath, trying to regain control of the situation, but his voice came out less firm this time. "I'll need you to open the trunk." "Why?" she asked calmly. "Because I'm in charge." The silence that followed was dense, heavy, the kind of silence that carries more truth than any words. The third policeman, the youngest, finally approached, but not to reinforce, to observe, and in his eyes there was something different, discomfort. He knew. That was wrong. Her husband crossed his arms slowly. No rush, without aggressiveness, just firmness. She has the right to know why. The policeman pointed his finger at him now. "Do you want to be arrested for obstruction?" But the threat rang hollow, forced, and everyone there noticed. The sound of the gas pump clicked, signaling a full tank, but no one moved. The air was charged with something that had not yet been named, but it already had form. He didn't need to scream. He didn't need to move forward. He just stood there, his arms relaxed at his sides, but everything about him communicated something that words could never do. Presence. The excited policeman tried to ignore it, turning his attention to her, but his gaze averted, returned. He dodged again, as if an invisible magnet pulled his attention to the silent man. "I'll ask one more time. Open the trunk." She didn't move, not because it challenged, but because he knew he didn't have to obey an unfounded order. Her husband took a half step forward. "Is that it?" Half step. The effect was immediate. The second police officer put his hand on his belt, near the vest. Instinctive gesture. A gesture of someone who realizes that the balance of power is changing. The third policeman, the youngest, frowned. Something on that face, something in that posture. It felt familiar. Her husband did not look away. He didn't blink. He didn't smile. I just watched, like someone who has seen this scene before. As someone who knows exactly how it ends. The excited policeman took a step back, almost imperceptible, but real. She felt it. His breathing changed, faster, shorter. The finger that pointed now fell next to the body. You're making things difficult." His voice came out less firmly. The husband tilted his head slightly, not in agreement, under observation. Like someone who studies behavior. Like someone who has faced men far more dangerous than 3 nervous policemen at a gas station. His silence was louder than any scream. The second officer took a sidestep, trying to get a better look at the man's face. The morning light hit differently now. It revealed the features, the structure. He narrowed his eyes. Recognition began to form, slowly, still uncertain, but starting. The excited policeman noticed the change in his colleague. "What's wrong?" "Nothing." The answer came too quickly, too nervous. She observed everything. He saw the exact moment when the dynamic began to crack. Not with violence, not with threats, only with the silent strength of someone who didn't need to prove anything. Her husband took a deep breath, slow, controlled, as someone who is completely in control of his own emotions. The excited policeman tried to resume his posture. "I'm not done here yet." But his voice no longer carried the same authority. Now it sounded like insistence, like a tantrum. The young man with the cell phone came closer. Not much, just enough to capture audio. The third policeman finally spoke. "Boss, I think we should. What did you owe?" The young policeman did not complete the sentence. He just looked at the silent man, and then to the boss, and back. The message was clear. This is not going to end well for us. She felt the change in the air. He felt the power shifting, slowly, inevitably. Her husband crossed his arms. That's all. But the gesture carried decades of discipline, of control, of strength that does not need to be announced. The excited policeman swallowed. and for the first time since he got out of the car, he looked small. The wind passed between the cars, kicking up fine dust from the asphalt. But no one moved. Everyone was waiting. They waited to see who would blink first. The excited policeman pulled a pen from his pocket. He wrote something down on the pad. Numbers, lyrics, anything to look like it was still in control. License plate. Now. She answered without hesitation. Firm voice. White. Each number pronounced accurately. He wrote it down slowly, purposely slow, as if time could give back the authority he felt slipping through his fingers. But is this car in your name? In their names. Convenient. He repeated the word. I had used it before. Now it sounded even more empty. The second policeman moved away a few steps and said something on the radio. Low, inaudible. But the gesture was clear. They were checking, looking for some irregularity, some pretext, anything. Her husband did not move. He just breathed, slow, profound, like someone who is used to waiting, as if knowing that the truth always arrives. Sooner or later, the excited policeman pointed to the interior of the car. Is there something illegal in there? No. Are you sure? Absolutely. Then you won't mind if I check. She kept her gaze fixed on him. You'll need a warrant for that. His face became even redder. The veins in his neck popped out. He stepped forward, invading her personal space again. Are you telling me how to do my job? That's when a driver stopped at the pump next door. Older man, gray hair. He got out of the car and immediately noticed the tension. His gaze went from the woman to the police, then to the silent man, and it stopped. He recognized something. I wasn't sure yet, but he acknowledged it. The excited policeman noticed the new witness and raised his voice even more. Do you think you can come here and break the law? The phrase made no sense, but I didn't have to do it. It was theater. Performance for those who were watching. The second policeman returned from the radio. He whispered something in the boss's ear. The expression of the exalted changed. Frustration. They had found nothing. No fines. No warrants. No history. Nothing. She saw defeat begin to form in his eyes. Small, but growing. Her husband adjusted the watch on his wrist. Simple gesture. Every day. But the way he did it, calm, deliberate, communicated something deeper. I have all the time in the world. You don't. The third officer, the youngest, looked at the older driver. And the driver looked back. And then they both looked at the silent man. The connection was forming, slowly, but inevitable. The excited policeman tried once again. Where do you live? She repeated the address. Same voice, same calm. And what do they work with? Her husband answered this time. I'm retired. His voice was deep, profound. It carried the weight of decades, not a threat, of experience. The policeman narrowed his eyes. Retired from what? To fight. The answer was suspended in the air. Simple, direct, but loaded with meaning that had not yet fully revealed itself. The second policeman frowned. Something clicked in his head. It was not yet certain, but it was close. The older driver pulled out his cell phone. Not to film, to search. His fingers slid across the screen. They paused, returned, and then they stopped completely. He looked up. He looked at the silent man, then to the screen, then back. And he swallowed. The excited policeman noticed the change in the air. He felt that something was about to turn. But I still didn't know what. And this uncertainty began to turn into fear. The excited policeman still held her wallet, but now his fingers clenched the document with less force, as if he didn't already know what to do with it. What is the legal reason for this approach? Her husband repeated the question. Same deep voice, same calm. But this time, there was something more. Firmness that would not accept silence as an answer. The policeman opened his mouth. Closed. It opened again. Suspicion of irregular behavior. The sentence came out fragmented, empty. He himself knew that he could not sustain it. Irregular behavior? She repeated, letting the weight of the question hang over. Is fueling the car irregular behavior? The second policeman moved uncomfortably. He looked to the sides, to the young man's camera, to the older driver who still held his cell phone, anywhere other than her face. The excited policeman took a half-step back. He tried to disguise it by adjusting his belt, but everyone saw it. The first physical retreat. Her husband didn't smile. He made no gesture of victory. He just kept his gaze fixed, like someone who observes a cornered animal and knows that the next move needs to be calculated. "Look," the excited policeman began, and the change in tone was immediate. It was no longer order, it was justification. "We receive calls all the time. You have to check." "What call?" Her husband's voice cut through the air. Silence. No calling. There was never a call. The third officer, the youngest, finally approached his colleague and whispered something. The excited policeman turned his head sharply. "What?" The young policeman pointed discreetly to the silent man. Then he made a vague gesture with his hand, like someone trying to describe something without words. The excited policeman frowned. Angry. Confused. "Speak properly." I think I know who he is." The phrase fell like a stone in still water. It created waves, small at first, but expanding. The excited policeman looked at her husband. He really looked this time, not as an authority evaluating a suspect, but like someone trying to fit pieces of a puzzle together. The face, the structure, the broad shoulders, the posture, the way he occupied the space without having to invade. Something began to form in his expression. Uncertainty, doubt, and then embryonic recognition. The older driver approached a few steps. Not much, just enough to get noticed. "I'm sorry," he began, his voice hesitant, looking directly at her husband. "You're not." But he did not complete the sentence. He didn't need to. The question was already answered in the silence that followed. Her husband did not confirm. He did not deny it. He just kept his gaze serene, like someone who has been through this 1,000 times, as someone who knows that the truth does not need confirmation when it is obvious. The excited policeman felt the ground move underfoot. The certainty that had sustained him for 15 minutes began to crack. He looked at his wife, then to her husband, then to his colleagues, and for the first time, his voice trembled. You are... He couldn't finish. The word stuck in my throat. Because ending the sentence would mean admitting. And admitting meant facing the dimension of the mistake I had just made. The second policeman closed his eyes for a second. He took a deep breath. When he opened it again, the look was that of someone who had just understood the gravity of the situation. She noticed the change. He felt the scales turn completely. He didn't have to say anything. He just crossed his arms and waited. The young man with the cell phone brought the camera closer. It was no longer a record of abuse. It was a turning point, of silent justice happening in real time. The excited policeman dropped her wallet. He did not return politely. He just let go, like someone who drops something that burns. The sound of a car passing on the street broke the silence. But no one moved. Everyone was waiting. They waited to see if he would have the courage to continue, or if he would finally retreat from the abyss he himself had created. The second officer pulled the cell phone from his pocket. Quick fingers on the screen. Looking, confirming. The bluish light illuminated his face for a few seconds, and then he froze. He looked up slowly. He looked at the screen, then to the silent man, back to the screen. His face turned pale. "Boss!" The voice came out low, almost a whisper. "We need to talk. Now." The excited policeman ignored it. He was still trying to maintain his posture, but the shoulders were no longer so wide. His chin was no longer so high. "We're not done here yet, boss." The tone has changed, more urgent, more serious. "Now." He moved away a few steps, gesturing for his superior to follow. The excited policeman hesitated. He looked at her, to her husband. Then he gave in and walked to his colleague. The two had their backs turned, but the voices leaked out, low, strained. "Do you know who this guy is?" "I don't care who." "Mike Tyson." The two words fell like brick in glass. Absolute silence. The excited policeman turned his head slowly. She looked at her husband as if she were seeing him for the first time. And this time, he really did. The structure, the face, the shoulders, the presence. Everything fell into place at once, like puzzle completed in a brutal second of clarity. He swallowed. The third policeman, the youngest, closed his eyes and lowered his head. I knew what that meant. I knew that they had crossed a line that should not have been crossed. She saw it all. He saw the exact moment when the arrogance evaporated. He saw fear replace authority. He saw power change hands without a single aggressive word being spoken. The older driver didn't hold on. I knew it. I saw him in the documentary last week. I knew it was him. The man's voice sounded too loud in the silence, but no one told him to shut up. Because now it didn't matter anymore. The secret had leaked. The truth was exposed. The excited policeman returned slowly. Each step seemed to weigh more than the last. When he got close to her, the posture was completely different. There was no more finger pointed. He no longer had a high voice. There was no longer any threat. I was ashamed. He picked up the wallet from the floor where he had dropped it. He held it out to her. The hand trembled slightly. He began, but his voice failed. She took her wallet back, slowly, no rush, letting him feel every second of the embarrassment he had built himself. Her husband had not yet moved. I had not yet spoken more than necessary, because I didn't need to. His presence said it all. The second police officer kept his cell phone. He looked at the ground. He took a deep breath. We received wrong information. It was a misunderstanding. Misunderstanding. The word sounded pathetic, even to those who spoke it. The excited policeman tried to regain some remnant of dignity. You are free to go, as if it were a concession, as if he still had the power to arrest or release. She did not answer. He just closed the bag. He adjusted the strap on his shoulder, and she looked at her husband. He nodded. Lightweight, almost imperceptible. Let's go. The young man with the cell phone was still filming. The older driver watched in respectful silence. Other people had stopped, far and away. But everyone felt the weight of what had just happened. The excited policeman took a step back, other and another, as if he wanted to disappear, as if he could undo the last 20 minutes just by stepping back. But he couldn't. She walked to the car door, opened, sat, closed. Her husband turned around, calm, no rush, as if he had all the time in the world. Because it did. Before getting into the car, he stopped. He looked at the three policemen, not angry, not with superiority, only with the sadness of those who have seen this scene happen to people who did not have their name. Your face, your protection, and that look hurt more than any words could. The excited policeman stood there, hands at his sides, watching the couple get into the car. The rigid posture of minutes ago had collapsed. Now he looked smaller, more fragile, like someone who just realized they chose the wrong battle. The second policeman approached him and spoke softly, urgently. We need to get out of here. Now. But the exalted did not move, eyes fixed on the car, as if he was still trying to process what had happened, as if he expected to wake up and discover that it was a nightmare. The young policeman put the radio in his belt. His hands trembled slightly. He knew. I knew that video was going to circulate. I knew that approach was going to make headlines. I knew they had made the kind of mistake that ends careers. She adjusted her seatbelt and looked in the rearview mirror. He saw the three policemen standing still, lost, like boats without rudders. The older driver approached her car, respectful, keeping his distance. Madam, he began, a choked voice. I'm sorry for what you've been through. That shouldn't have happened. She just nodded. I needed no apologies from him. He hadn't done anything, but the gesture was beautiful, human. Her husband started the engine. The deep sound filled the silence of the station. He didn't look at the cops. He didn't need to. I had already said everything that needed to be said. The excited policeman finally tried to speak. Mr. Tyson, the voice came out cracked, weak, like someone asking for forgiveness but knowing that they don't deserve to receive. Mike turned his head. She looked at him through the glass, and in that look there was something devastating. Not anger, disappointment. It was the look of someone who had faced the most dangerous men in the world inside a ring. But he found the real cowards outside of him. The policeman lowered his eyes, unable to sustain the weight of that gaze. The second officer pulled his arm. "Let's go, before more people arrive." But it was too late. Another car had stopped. A woman came downstairs, cell phone in hand, filming. Then one more. A couple. Also with cameras. The word had spread. Rapid. Inevitable. Mike Tyson, gas station. Police approach. The young man with the first video approached the police car. Non-threatening. Just firm. "I recorded everything, from beginning to end, and it's already in the cloud, so there's no point in trying anything." The phrase was not a threat. It was a warning. Protection. Guarantee that the truth would not be erased. The excited policeman opened his mouth to answer, but nothing came out, because there was nothing to say. There was no justification. There was no excuse to erase what he had just done. He finally walked to the patrol car, every step heavy. Defeated. The other two followed in silence. She watched the three get into the car. He saw the door close. He saw the car reverse. Slowly, as if even the outlet felt ashamed. Mike put his hand on hers. That's all. One touch. Lightweight, but full of meaning. Just, "You're safe." She took a deep breath. He felt the tension finally begin to deflate. Slowly, like air coming out of a punctured balloon. The older driver tapped the window lightly. Mike lowered it. "Sir, thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for not letting this go." Mike just nodded, concise, respectful, because he knew. I knew that most of the time. There were no cameras. There were no witnesses. There was no famous name to make police officers retreat, and that hurt more than any punch he had ever taken. The vehicle left the station. Slowly. No siren, no urgency. Just running away from error, running away from shame, running away from the truth that was now recorded on 5 different cell phones. She looked at her husband. "Thank you." He did not respond with words. He just shook her hand back, and in that silence, there was everything that needed to be said. And you? Would you have that courage? Would it have stood firm, even though it knew it could end up much worse? Comment there, because this story is not just about a famous name. It's about all the times someone uses power to intimidate those who can't defend themselves. The car turned the corner and disappeared, but her presence still hung in the air, like toxic smoke that takes time to dissipate. The young man who had filmed everything put his cell phone away and walked to the convenience store. But before entering, he looked back for the couple in the car, and he waved, concise, supportive. She returned the gesture, small, but full of gratitude. The older driver was still there, stationary, as if he needed to process what he had just witnessed. He looked at Mike through the glass and made a simple gesture, fist clenched over the heart. Respect. Mike waved back, and at that moment he was not the boxing legend. He was not the champion. It was just a man who had protected his wife, as any husband would. 2 more cars stopped. People went down. Some recognized it. Others just felt that something important had happened there. A middle-aged woman approached her window, hesitant, but determined. I just wanted to say," the voice trembled, "I've been there, and in my turn, there was no one with me. Thanks. Thank you for not letting it go cheap." The woman's eyes watered. Not sadness, of relief. As if seeing someone win that battle healed some of the wound she still carried. She held the woman's hand through the window. "I'm sorry for what you went through." The woman just squeezed her hand back and walked away, cleaning the eyes, trying not to collapse there in front of strangers. Mike looked in the rearview mirror. He saw more people arriving. He saw cell phones being raised. He saw the moment turning into something bigger than them. "We need to go," he said quietly. She agreed, not because I was afraid, but because I knew. He knew that moment had already fulfilled its purpose, To prolong it would be to transform justice into a spectacle. He set the march. The car started moving. The older driver and the young man who filmed stayed there, watching, keeping that moment as something they would tell later, for children, for grandchildren, for anyone who doubted that silent justice still exists. She looked in the side mirror. He saw the post lagging behind. He saw the people still standing still. He saw the place where, for 15 minutes, she had been treated as a criminal without a crime. And he felt something strange. Not anger, not revenge. Feather. Pity for men who use power as a shield because they have no character as armor. Sorry for those who confuse authority with superiority. Pity for those who only respect when they are afraid. Mike drove quietly. Steady hands on the wheel. Look focused on the road. But she knew that silence. I knew what he was carrying. Are you okay? She asked. He took a deep breath before answering. I'm thinking about how many times this happens. And the person has no camera. There are no witnesses. There isn't. He paused. It doesn't have my name. His voice carried weight, not ego, of responsibility. She put her hand on his arm. But today I did. And that matters. Mike nodded. Lightweight, but the gaze was still far away. Because he knew. He knew that winning a battle did not win the war. I knew that tomorrow, at another station, in another city, the same scene would be repeated. And maybe the person was unlucky. The traffic light turned red. The car stopped. She looked out the window. He saw a black girl, maybe about 8 years old, crossing the street with her mother. The girl looked at the car. He looked at her, and he smiled. That innocent smile. That pure confidence of those who still don't understand that the world can be cruel for no reason. She smiled back, and he felt something move in his chest. May she never have to go through this. May she grow up in a better world. The light opened. The car followed, and little by little, the weight began to lighten. Not because he had forgotten, but because I knew they did the right thing. Faced. They did not back down. They did not accept it. And sometimes, that's all you can do. Breathing. Her cell phone vibrated. Notification. Then another, and yet another. The video was already circulating. Fast. Inevitable. She looked at the screen. He saw the comments coming up. Hundreds. Thousands. Finally, someone exposed it. It happened to me last week. Thank you for not being silent. She hung up her cell phone. I didn't need to read anymore. The message had already been delivered. Share this story. Because someone today will go through the same. And you may need to know that you are not alone. That resisting is possible. That justice sometimes happens. 3 blocks later, Mike pulled his car into a quiet parking lot. He turned off the engine. He stood there, hands still on the wheel, looking ahead. But I don't sell the street. Seeing something more distant. She waited. I knew that silence. I knew he needed to sue. When I was 17, he began, a low voice. My coach told me something. He said I was going to be famous, that there would be money, that he was going to have power. He paused. He took a deep breath. But I said that the real test would not be in the ring. It would be outside of it. It would be when I saw someone being crushed and had to choose between intervening or moving forward. She put her hand on his. You chose the right one. Today I had a choice, he replied. But how many times could I not? How many times was I too young, too scared, too lost to do anything? His voice carried something she rarely heard. Vulnerability. The man that the world saw as unbreakable, showing the cracks that only those who love can see. You can't carry all the battles, Mike. I know, he said, but I can carry this one. He turned his face to her, and in his eyes, she saw something beautiful. Not anger, not wounded pride, purpose. Tomorrow, that video will be everywhere. They will talk about him. They will talk about you. They will do material, debate, discussion. She nodded. And are you okay with that? He asked. She thought for a moment. He thought about the humiliation, in fear, in injustice. But he also thought of the woman he had thanked, the girl crossing the street, in the hundreds of comments from people who needed to see that resistance was possible. I am, she replied firmly, because if I keep quiet, those three will do it again. With someone else. That maybe you don't have. That maybe it doesn't have a camera. That you may not be able to return home in one piece. Mike shook her hand. You're stronger than me. She laughed, lightweight, short. I'm married to you. I have no choice but to be strong. He smiled. Small, but real. They stayed there for a few more minutes. Just existing. Just breathing. Letting the weight of the day begin to unravel. His cell phone vibrated. He looked at the screen. Message from the lawyer. After the press officer. After friends. Everyone wants to know. Everyone wanting to help. He put his cell phone away without answering. Later, he said, Now I just want to go home. With you. She nodded. He started the engine again. The car returned to the street. The sun was beginning to sink below the horizon. The golden light of the afternoon bathed the city. And somehow, the world looked a little different. No better. Not yet, but different. As if a small crack had opened in the wall of injustice. Small, but real. She looked out the window. He saw people walking, living, fighting your own invisible battles, and he thought, how many of them are carrying the same weight that I carried today? There was no answer, but now he was sure of one thing. Silence would never be an option again. Accepting would never be the way again, because dignity is not negotiable. Respect is not begged, and justice, when it is not given, must be demanded. Mike turned to their street. The house appeared at the end of the block. Simple. Quiet. Safe. He pulled the car into the garage. He turned off the engine. They stayed there. Just one more moment. Because they both knew. When they entered that house, the phone would ring. The press was going to knock on the door. The world was going to demand a position. But now, there, it was just the two of them. A couple who had faced the day, and defeated. She turned to him. Thank you for being there. I always will be, he replied. And she believed. Because after everything they'd been through together, she knew. She knew that this man, famous, powerful, feared, would choose to be by her side always, not out of obligation. For love, they got out of the car. They walked to the door, entered, and the door closed behind them, steadfast, safe, as it should be. And you, would you have forgiven? Would he have let it go? Or would he have done what they did, confronted, resisted, exposed? Comment there. Because this story is not only theirs, it belongs to all of us who have felt the weight of injustice, and we choose not to accept it. 2 weeks later, the video had surpassed 20 million views, reports on all channels, heated debates, internal investigations opened. The 3 police officers had been removed, awaiting administrative proceedings, but inside that simple house, life had returned to the normal rhythm. Breakfast in the morning, conversations in the afternoon, comfortable silences at night. She was in the kitchen when her cell phone rang. Unknown number. Hesitated, but he answered. Hello? Hi. My name is Sarah. The voice on the other end was young, nervous. I saw the video, and I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you. For not being silent, for not accepting, because it happened to me too. 3 months ago, and I didn't have the courage to do anything. I was afraid, embarrassed. But to see you, it made me realize that I didn't do anything wrong, that I shouldn't carry this guilt. The girl's voice broke at the end. She closed her eyes. He took a deep breath. You've never done anything wrong, Sarah. And I'm sorry for what you've been through. There were sobs on the other side. Then silence. Then a whispered, thank you, before the call drops. She stood there, cell phone in hand, staring at the empty screen. Mike entered the kitchen. He saw her expression. Is everything okay? She nodded, but his eyes sparkled. It's okay. Alone. It just reminded me why it was worth it. He approached. He put his hands on her shoulders. Firm. Protective. Every time someone fights, he said quietly. The wall cracks a little more. She turned and hugged him, strong, like someone who holds certainty in human form. Outside, life went on. Cars passed by. Children played in the street. The world turned as it always did. But something had changed. Small, invisible, but real. Because now there was one more story. One more proof. Another record that resistance is possible. That justice, even imperfect, even slow, can still happen. Mike let go of the hug and looked at her. You know you're going to have more calls, right? More messages. More people wanting to share what happened. I know. And are you ready for this? She thought for a moment. He thought about the weight, in responsibility, in the pain of hearing stories that she knew were real. That happened every day, everywhere. But he also thought of Sarah's voice, in the shaky thank you, in hope being reborn in someone who had given up on her. I'm ready, she said, because if I don't do it, who's going to? Mike smiled, proud, not the kind of pride that inflates the ego, but the kind that recognizes courage when he sees it. They returned to the living room. They sat on the couch. She leaned her head on his shoulder. The television was on, low, almost inaudible. But the image showed the gas station, the same scene, the same angle. She took the remote and hung up. He didn't need to revive. I had already lived once. I had already faced it. I had already won. Now it was time to rest, to breathe, to remember that they were more than that moment, more than that video, more than that battle. They were a couple, a family, a love story that had survived rings, scandals, mistakes, successes, and now, right, and it was still standing. Deep breath. Mike looked out the window. The sun was setting slowly, dyeing the sky orange and pink. Do you think anything has changed? He asked. Really? She thought, honestly, I don't know if everything has changed, but something has changed. And sometimes, something is enough. He nodded, silent, pensive, because he knew. I knew that the fight does not end with a victory, that justice is not built with a viral video, that real change takes time, generations, blood, sweat, persistence. But he also knew that every big change starts with a small step. And today, they had taken that step. Long silence, night fell. The lights in the house came on. Life went on. As always, it continues. But inside that house, two people were carrying something new. Not anger, not resentment. Hope. Hope that the world can still be better. That justice can still win. That silence, one day, will cease to be a refuge for cowards and become the choice of the strong. And as long as there are people willing to confront it, resisting, not to be silent, that day will come. If this story made you reflect on power, respect, courage, and justice, leave the like. Comment on your opinion. It matters. Subscribe to the channel. Activate the bell so you don't miss the next stories, and share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Because stories like this just keep coming to you. Because you help to spread more real stories, more silent lessons, more emotional justice. See you next time.